Welcome to the 42 Podcast, where a Christian and an atheist sit down to discuss the meanings of life, the universe, and everything else in between. Thank you for joining us. Hey, listeners. So, there's no Lindsey today. She and I have taken some downtime over the Christmas and New Year break, and we're going to get back to our regular schedule of Monday releases next Monday with a whole new episode on superstitions. And we're going to talk about some fun stuff in that, the superstitions we each have, some of the unique ones we've found. It's going to be a fun conversation. But in the meantime, I'm taking the opportunity to talk with you today. See, you've joined in on our conversation. You are a part of why Lindsey and I are sharing it. Not just a part of. You are a huge piece of what we're doing. And we appreciate that. We appreciate the time you're taking on Mondays or whenever you're listening to this episode to join us. And while we can't hear and interact with all of you and your thoughts, we appreciate you for just jumping into the conversation. But with that, I want to share some of the conversations that we're planning on having in the very near future. Because as we continue to talk, as we continue to build and, well, try to grow this podcast, we want to have conversations that you're interested in as well. So if you would jump on and join us in the social media conversation, post your thoughts. Post what you would like to hear Lindsey and I talk about. And we only have about a half-hour conversation, which in some of the conversations we've had has only let us go surface deep. But we're going to return to, we're going to revisit, and we're going to continue to explore this world together. Whether it's a topic that needs more time down the road or a whole new topic. But those new topics, I said I wanted to share with you some of the things coming up. And as I said, next Monday we're going to jump into a fun and interesting one on superstition and luck. Lindsey and I have been doing some research and trying to understand what our superstitions are and trying to understand what some other unique superstitions are throughout the world. So jump in on that. That's going to be a fun conversation. We've teased it, we've talked about it, but it's time to also start the book club. And we're going to start the book club by talking about pop culture and pop culture influences that Lindsey and I have each encountered, enjoy, and appreciate, and introduce a book that you're invited to read alongside with us. And then at a later episode, we're going to talk about that book. So we both have some interesting picks. We're going to flip a coin and see who gets to pick first and introduce the book for our book club in 2 weeks from when you're listening to this episode roughly. So that'll be episode 9. And then another episode that she and I did early in the days of experimenting with this podcast. Lindsey and I have been at this since September, and we released our first episode in November. But there are a bunch of episodes that we're calling the Lost Topics. And one of those lost topics was a conversation that she and I had on creationism, which is my belief structure, and evolution, which has become Lindsey's belief structure. And, as you can guess, we fall on different parts and different thoughts of the value of each of these belief structures. So she and I are going to go back and actually revisit that lost topic of evolution and creationism. That'll be episode 10. Yeah, when we recorded the lost topic of that, it was pretty interesting. That actually turned into a 2-hour conversation that we recorded, decided to move away from, but want to revisit. So I'm looking forward to what that will be down the road again, and for how you can even join in the conversation if you want through social media. But again, the thing that Lindsey and I are trying to show is that in all of these conversations, we can continue to grow, respect, and love one another through it all. And one conversation, I haven't talked about this one with Lindsey yet, but one conversation that I want to have, and I'm going to push for a bit, is the influences of social media. And I understand there's actually a very deep and cutting irony in creating a podcast in the middle of a pandemic, using social media to promote it, and having the podcast, which in and of itself is a form of social media, and then having a discussion about social media and what it's doing to us as a society. I think this is going to be a really interesting conversation. We're going to have that down the road at some point as well. And I'm curious to see what Lindsey thinks. I'm curious to see what each of you thinks. For those of you who know us and have been interacting directly, thank you for your feedback. You are a part of the reason that we are doing this, because, hey, we're just trying to have a conversation and show that any of us can have conversations with anyone. So, thank you, listeners, for tuning in, for sharing, for interacting, and for just being a part of what Lindsey and I are starting to build here. If you can do us a favor, though, not just only in listening, but if you're on the Apple Podcast, give us a rate and review. That really helps with the algorithm. That helps us build a listener base. That helps us get this podcast out to more ears and more voices that may be interested in joining in this conversation. If you're using the Spotify, I have no idea how to rate and review. Gotta admit, I'm an Apple guy. Sorry. But if you're using the Spotify and you know how to rate and review, please do. If you don't, please share it. If you think this is a conversation that others may be interested in, just take a moment, drop it in on your social media, deep irony again, and share it, and just give us your thoughts with that share. Are we worth listening to? Is this a conversation worth pursuing? Either way, it helps. And listeners, we're doing this because we think there's value in each of us coming together. And Lindsey and I, like we've said multiple times, we have similar backgrounds but have come to different conclusions. You may have similar backgrounds or an entirely different background than us. But we want to talk. We want to be able to show that we can be united as people, but different, diverse, and respect one another. I hope this Christmas and holiday season has been a good one for you. I hope it has been filled with peace and calm in the midst of what the chaos of 2020 has been. And at the time of recording this, New Year's hasn't happened just yet, but it's right around the corner. So I hope it's a good New Year for each of us. I hope 2021 brings in a whole new opportunity for grace, for hope, for love. Thank you for listening to us. Thank you for interacting with us. You are a huge piece of what we're doing, and the numbers that I'm seeing on the back end, I appreciate each and every one of you who has tuned in and put your ears to this podcast, put your mind to what we're talking about. Thank you. Thank you for being a part of this journey with Lindsey and I. We look forward to what's to come down the road as we continue to grow in these conversations, as we continue to explore life together. Thank you. Happy New Year. Well, congratulations for sticking around to yet the end of another episode. And this is where I normally ask Lindsey, after a good conversation, if she and I are still friends. But today, it's your turn. Listener, are we still friends? I hope so. Have a great year. We'll see you in a week.